I don't know if you've been following a lot of the trials, I'd imagine, with January 6th.
A couple of them.
So there were how many have there been? Have there been 3, or have we had more so far?
I think 3 total trials. I got subpoenaed by the January 6th committee. That's a whole nother story. That cost me a fortune.
Wow.
But
well, so we did a segment on here, and I mentioned that for the people who just walked in the front doors that were opened by the cops, how are you going to charge them? How are you going to convict on trespassing when the cops open the door and say, "Come on in"? You know, for people who don't know about trespassing, you got to give a warning. If you don't have a sign on your property that says no trespassing, people can walk on your property. You can tell them to leave, but you got to give them a warning first. If you have a sign, you don't need to give them a warning because the sign is the warning, basically. So once they enter the property, you've got them on trespassing. The police can issue a charge. I brought that up. These, young Turks, for instance, said I was stupid and I was wrong. And then what happens? We actually saw a guy get acquitted exactly on those grounds.
Yeah, because the Capitol building is a public free space. Americans can go in and out of there. Foreigners can go in and out of there literally almost any time of day. It's not trespassing. There's certain areas they can't go to.
And the cops are on video opening the doors. Yeah.
Those guys need to be interrogated.
So when we look at, when you look at what's going on with what happened in Texas, there's nothing that unifies this country, right? So this thing happens, and what do we get? What frustrates me the most, I see posts from Democrat activists saying Republicans are spineless and they won't, enact gun reform or things like that. They post, there's a meme going viral where they're like, ban the AR-15. And I'm just sitting here like, none of these people have actually offered up any real solutions. They're not interested in having a conversation about any real solutions. They are mindless drones. Saying ban the AR-15 is literally meaningless.
No, it's like an assault rifle ban, or or shifting the conversation from, oh, that's an automatic gun. America doesn't allow the sale of automatic firearms, and it doesn't. There's no. It
does with tax stamps.
Well, right.
Pre-1984 or whatever.
Right.
No, but what I mean is, it's like let's approach it from this point. They've banned the AR-15. Oh no, and now everyone's using the AR-10. They've banned the AR-15 and my M1A or my SCAR 20S, or like, come on, name a different gun. They exist. They're coming out and they're like, they use this rifle in many instances with these shootings. It's an AR style rifle.
Right.
And so they're saying, ban this. And I'm like, yo, you're just not saying anything.
I would like to see a poll of people and what they think AR stands for, because I think a large percentage of Americans think it means automatic rifle.
Yeah.
Or assault rifle.
Or assault rifle.
And it means Armalite rifle, which is the company that created the thing.
Yeah.
But they have no idea what they're talking about.
They don't even Google it.
And so what do you get? You get David Hogg, right? He posts in April, like, I bet if I sat down with my critics, we would agree on things. And I tweeted him politely, like, hey, man, come on the show. We'd love to have you. We'll cover it. They don't respond. And so I tried again. He's got no obligation to respond to me, mind you. I'm not, saying he has to. But then he goes on with Matt Walsh. He goes on with establishment personalities that are just playing to the same audience. There's no real conversation happening. I look at that and I'm just like, how could anyone believe that the path forward in this country is going to be unity? I can't see it.
Not anytime soon.
Anytime soon, not even anytime late, to be honest. Until we get ripped apart, until
we've got English to bond us, we've got the almighty dollar. I mean, it was basically it's a unification of states, which are all disunified, you could say, but unified under the idea of the Constitution. We all follow the Constitution for the most part. Constitutional law presides in every state. Those are the things that hold us. But our ideas never really were supposed to be the same or anything like that. Even religion, you're allowed to have your own religion.
But they're not following the laws anymore. California, for instance, won't enforce immigration law, and it's actually granted them an extra congressional seat and an extra electoral college vote because it's by population, not citizenry. So when you have states outright defying the union and federal laws, why would any other state be like, okay, and now what do we get? We get Oklahoma being like, okay, we're going to ban abortion outright. We don't care what the Supreme Court says. That's where we're heading, and I think it is the rule, not the exception, that on the right, there's a conversation around policy issues. Ben Shapiro will yell, debate me, right? That's the meme. On the left, it's the exception. They don't debate. And if they try to, they have no idea what they're talking about.
Well, it's fake. That's why you're not going to get a solution, because they have political epithets that they throw out on any conversation. Gun control, abortion, whatever, immigration, drugs, whatever you want to talk about, but they don't have actual solutions. And you're right. On the right, they'll at least debate them. and then try to find an answer like we did under the Trump administration for the border, for the opioid crisis, for illegal immigration, and for things like, President Trump actually, reformed the criminal justice system more than any president in modern American history. And people don't know that, because he a Republican president was the one who did judicial reform, which is crazy. It's a crazy concept because it's not popular on the right. But I thought he was doing the right thing, and I thought it worked. But it gets covered up because no one wants to talk about those things.
What did he do?
He did a lot of this is getting technical, but a lot of alleviations of, so when we sentence people for drug crimes and they get sentenced unequally because of skin color or ethnic background, it sort of stacks up. So you can eliminate those rules and regulations. You can give the judges more flexibility to reduce those types of sentences. And he basically undid the Biden 98 crime bill. You can't. Congress didn't veto it, but you take out a lot of the minimum mandatory sentence requirements, like grandmother gets found with a gun under her bed that she doesn't know is there and her nephew put it there, you're going to send her up the creek for 10 years.
That's insane.
It's insane, but it happens. I've defended people that this happened to, and that's why you can't get any real, actual, true judicial reform without Congress.
Mandatory minimums, in my opinion, is stupidest thing.
It's crazy.
Stupidest thing. I think, our judicial system needs to be human. It's supposed to be. Judges are supposed to interpret the law. Mm-hmm. So you're supposed to have, like, Grandma, how'd you come across that snub nose? And she'll be like, I don't know. It's not mine. And they'll be like, okay, well.
10 years.
Well, no, it should be like, we're seizing it. If you don't know where it came from and it's not yours, then it's ours now.
Right.
Don't let it happen again. Nobody got hurt.
Did the mandatory minimums come up because judges were giving people they knew like low sentences?
Well, they can't unless you fix the law, or unless you give the judges the ability to use this thing called a safety valve exception in federal court, and they didn't have a lot of those tools. But you also have to appoint judges who are going to do that, who are going to see the way things that Tim just said, exercise judicial discretion. And that was a big part of the candidates they're not candidates, the appointees that Trump put into the federal judiciary is people who exercise discretion on the criminal side.
I can't speak for federal government, but I know that in Illinois, the mandatory minimums on, say, drug sentencing or burglary sentencing was to deter crime. So the idea was that a criminal would find out that the law was passed. No, they don't. They don't know. They don't care. They just know they know they'll go to jail if they get caught. So you end up with crazy stories. I remember one story was about a teenager who his neighbors went out of town. The neighbors asked this kid, their next door neighbors, to keep an eye on the house. The kid, knowing they weren't there, broke in the back door using the keys, because he had the keys, and he stole a beer. Cops driving by saw someone was in there, knowing the people were out of town, went in, arrested him. And then they were like, they said about this kid, like, okay, we don't think he should be charged with anything severe, maybe trespassing. And the DA was like, no, there's a mandatory minimum for burglary. He went in the property, he took something, he burglarized the property. And so apparently, like, it was done. It was 4 years. And the judge was like, I don't want to do this, but it's out of my hands. It's statutory. And then the prisons were like, there is no way we are taking a kid who took a beer to come here. And it was this huge legal battle. I don't exactly remember what happened, but this was a story I heard, I think it was like 18 years ago now, talking about it in Illinois. That's the problem with these things. Anyone can look at that and be like, kid, don't take beer from your neighbors. And the neighbors would have been like, oh, yeah, that's Johnny. Like, okay, well, we're fine with him taking a couple bucks. Courts didn't care. They didn't see it that way. Those things are dumb. So that was good, the crime reform stuff that Trump had done.
Yeah, but the problem is overcorrection, at least in the law enforcement area, in the judiciary, right? Drugs become a problem, they overcorrect. 20-year minimum mandatory sentences for if you're caught with this amount of this or this amount of that. That's a lot of time that most people, like Tim said, don't know about. It's an overcorrection. Same thing with gun control, right? I think it's going to get to a point where there'll be an overcorrection instead of the right correction, because it'll be political and not the one that people actually want, and it's going to get messy.
What do you think would be like the right correction or a good move? Well, gun control.
For gun control, I mean, look, I'm a big 2A guy. I'm all for it, but I think while I agree that we have background checks, I think our background check system isn't good. It's run by the government, and it's not done the way it needs to be done. I mean, that is like the FBI runs it or ATF or whatever, right? But there can be a better system of screening, take another day or two and build a better algorithm to screen out people with prior activities, prior hits, prior contacts with law enforcement, mental illness issues, things like that. People keep saying, oh, we have background checks. Well, you can have background checks, and if they suck, then what's the point?
But
that's step one.
Do they suck? I mean, the first time I went to buy guns, I was on the mandatory wait. I was delayed.
Well, that's government. I mean,
sure.
It's putting you on a wait list for the government to give you a response. It's kind of standard operating procedure.
I think there's a lot of good intentions in the background check system.
Yeah.
I think reforming it would give you the exact same results.
Really?
Yeah, it's government, man. You know, there's some things I'm okay with when it comes to government, but I'm like, if it's not working now, what can we do to fix it? Well, I certainly think it's worth looking at trying to fix, for sure. I just think it will devolve. It'll start off really great, and then after a little while, it'll start to break down. But you know, I will say this: I'm in favor. I would actually agree. I'll kind of simmer down a little bit. I think one of the problems that we have with government is that we create a program and then walk away from it. Yeah. And then what happens is it starts to fester and rot. Yeah. If we came back every couple of years and said, let's start it over and reassess, we could actually adapt. And if we're looking at our background checks through the NICS, when you buy a gun, and we're like, how is it not working? What can we do to make it work better? And then we just adapt and move what we're already doing. I think we could maybe improve it for sure.
So let me ask you this. So what do you think the background checks that we have right now are missing?
Data. Hard data about contacts with law enforcement and individuals who've had run-ins with mental hospitals and mental health issues. That's one of the biggest, things. And now that with the advent of social media, we're not capturing all the flags of these guys putting on, you can put up whatever you want on social media. Well, not on Twitter, but on Truth you can. And you can say whatever you want, but if you're out there, screaming with guns on social media about attacking someone, that's got to be flagged somehow. And that algorithm has to be better to capture that data, to give it to the government, to put in that database to screen off of. Because every one of these serial, massacres, they all have one unifying connection, and that is a mental health issue of some sort.
But what sort of contact with law enforcement would you flag as being justified to remove somebody's constitutional rights?
Yeah, that's a great question. So not just any contact, but if you had contact and the person appeared mentally ill, then you had them referred for mental health referral and balance check, then that should be, when they go to buy a gun, I'm not saying they should be denied. I'm saying that information should be in the system so someone can go look at it and say, okay, should we give this person a gun? Let's go check on him. Let's go pull all his social media. Let's go see what he's been saying. That's all. I'm not saying you can't get it, but it needs to be better.
So it's like a type of red flag law is kind of what you're
Yeah.
I don't think it works, man.
I know.
Look, so you'd have to quantify mental illnesses.
Yeah.
It's not just any mental illness. And then you've got the issue of you're getting dangerously close to free speech.
Yeah.
People can post things, and then a background check gives arbitrary authority to some agency that's unseen to be like, we just think this guy's no good. I already think it was bad that when I went to buy a weapon, so we get death threats. I mean, we have these issues. I want to take care of myself, protect myself. I go to the gun store, and they're like, fill out the forms. They said, you're delayed. We'll let you know. Why? I am a law-abiding citizen. I have no history of mental illness. There's nothing on my record, but I get delayed. Now imagine they start using people's speech against them. All of a sudden now people are having their constitutional rights curtailed, but not even their constitutional rights, their God-given rights to defend themselves from some of these crazy people, from lunatics, or just to keep and bear arms. I mean, regardless, you have a right, regardless of government, in my opinion, to do it. It gets dangerous when already there is, I think it's the FBI that does it, that does the National Instant Check System or whatever it's called. It's already bad enough they could deny you and you don't know why. It happened to James O'Keefe. He got put on the list. Remember this? They just arbitrarily put him on the list and he couldn't buy a weapon. He had to file a lawsuit. Fortunately, he has the support to actually do that. This is why I don't know if there's actually a solution outside of cultural issues. Because we can talk about all of these things we can do, but then you take a look at this dude in Texas, and he, first of all, how did he afford the thousands, like $8,000 in weaponry, whatever? The money should have been a barrier, but it wasn't. Then he passes the background checks. What could have been done? The left says ban the AR-15, so then he buys an AK.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
But you're not saying anything. They say do background checks. He passed a background check. Do better background checks. And then what? Regular people all of a sudden can't defend themselves? Look, the end result of what the Democratic position is, I shouldn't say the left. I apologize for that because leftists like guns. I always got to correct myself. They do. They're big on guns. The end result is just ban all guns. That is the only thing. And even that won't work because 3D printed guns exist. And you can make a gun out of a 3D printed material. You don't need much metal other than the firing pin, a thumbtack or something.
Well, even in addition to that, I mean, we already have more guns in this country than we have people. Do you think all those people are going to get rid of the guns because you pass a law?
No, they're going to lose them in boating accidents.
I mean, do you think everybody who had a bump stock turned it in because the government said, nope, can't have it?
Hey, and that was Trump.
And there was one jurisdiction where they had a thing where you could return. I don't know if it was a buyback or not, but they wanted you to return in your bump stocks. And out of the entire city, they got 7.
Wow.
Oh, wow. 7. What do
know
you think happened to all the other ones?
I heard somebody on Twitter, and they said, you know what we need? We need gun buybacks. We need buybacks.
Who's going to buy them?
The government. And they said no. They were like $5,000 per gun. And I was like, dude, I'll go to the gun store and buy a gun for a couple $100 and then bring it in for $5,000. Are you nuts? I guess their idea is like, yeah, then the government basically buys every gun from every gun store and there's no guns. No, then people start 3D printing them and turning them in for $5,000. Hey, it's $10 in plastic and now I got, it doesn't work, man.
But that's the thing, they're already there. So all it's going to do is create a black market.
Yep, and then that's even
if somebody
worse.
wants to find a gun, they're going to find a gun. If somebody wants to kill, they're going to find a way to kill.
There are videos.
So we got to start addressing the cultural aspects of this and people's behavior. What's triggering people now that these young kids want to start slaughtering their classmates when this hasn't been a precedent in the United States until, 1999? We've had guns in the schools and guns in kids' hands since the 1800s. This is a very recent problem.
I'm looking at the pharmaceutical industry and kids on Klonopin when they're 12 or 14. Wellbutrin, Prozac, Adderall. My gosh, Adderall, it's an amphetamine. And then the kids don't have emotions. They never cried it out when they were 13 because they didn't feel the tear. They didn't feel it. And now they're lashing out like wild, mindless, or emotionless, rather.
Giving kids amphetamines or SSRIs. Just all of this stuff that kids are being pumped full of. And I also got to say, social media.
Yeah.
We talk about the media aspect of this, how these shooters think they're going to get notoriety, but it's also people. I don't know much about this. Maybe you guys saw this where people on Discord were apparently egging this guy on. You see this stuff. Mm-hmm. I've seen posts before. People are like, do it. You're a loser. You won't do it, and they try and egg him on.
That's not helpful.
It feels like it's so entrenched. Like I'm like, okay, you could homeschool your kids, arm the teachers, and take the kids off of psychoactive pharmaceuticals. But like that's like, all right, Titanic, you're about to hit the iceberg. Turn left. Like it sounds like. First of all, how in the hell are you going to do all that? The pharmaceutical industry, it feels like, from my perspective, that it's so entrenched in our existence at this point. I don't know how many billion-dollar industry it is, and like the way Pfizer just ran the COVID response, seemingly like they were in charge. Somehow a corporation was in charge. I don't know how to get pharmaceuticals out of 12-year-olds' hands exactly. But I mean,
it's a scary reality, man.
You got to educate the parents.
But, I'd be willing to bet that if you start talking about the pharmaceutical role and what's been happening in this country, the dramatic spike, I'd be willing to bet this. Maybe I'm wrong. There is going to be a visible correlation between the increase in medicating children and the increase in violent outbursts, general violence, and maybe mass shootings or things like this. General violence. Because I think the drugs are messing kids up. But if you start talking about that, that Big Pharma's funding all of these networks. They're not going to say it. Have you ever seen that meme where it's like, local news brought to you by Pfizer. It's like CNN brought to you by Pfizer and ABC and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to be on one of these big networks bad-mouthing the pharmaceutical companies. Or scaring parents.
Odd, because it is. I mean, it's got to be the pharmaceutical. It's got to be the drugs. It's got to be psychoactive drugs and the 14, 15-year-old kids. What else? I mean, it's driving them insane. Right?
I don't know if it has to be. I think it plays a role.
Gosh,
I think social media plays a huge role, man.
Yeah.
I think it's a combination of factors, but what frustrates me the most is that for many people on the left, their only response is to want to confiscate guns
liberals,
is to curtail the civil rights, to curtail the constitutional rights of people who have committed no crime at all. We have so if we're looking at a scale of things that are reasonable versus not reasonable, it seems that would be very reasonable to suggest, hey, why don't we lock down our schools and have a single point of entry, a single point of exit, and a security guard? That's something very easy that we could do. That's something that would be incredibly cost effective given how much money we spend on other things like $40 billion to Ukraine. And every single time we propose a common sense solution, they dig their heels into the ground and they say no. Their
We want
only
to ban
answer
guns.
is gun control.
Yeah. And gun control, it's just doesn't do anything.
I'm really concerned about, I think you mentioned red flag laws earlier, and like if someone has a medical marijuana card and the government has it scheduled as a narcotic for some freaking reason.
Yeah, you're out. If you get this is really messed up. If you have a medical marijuana card, you can't get a gun.
As it currently stands. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't get a handgun in
And
Maryland.
and I remember I was in California and I was skating in Venice, and there are these guys that stand outside of these shops, and they're like, yo, weed card, and I'm skating, and the dude goes, bro, come here, and I was like, I stopped, what up? And he goes, you got your weed card yet? And then I was like, what do I need a weed card for? And he's like, oh, medical marijuana, dude. He's like, you got to get medical marijuana, man. And then I was like, I don't need it. And he goes, oh no, you got something. You got to talk to the doctor, man. You don't know until you talk to the doctor. And then I was like, I'm healthy and I got nothing wrong with me. And he goes, you skateboard, your feet hurt? And I was like, sometimes, like, oh, dude, you need weed. You got to come in and talk to the doctor, $5.
I got my medical card in San Francisco, and they're like, so what's the problem? I was like, I'm stressed. He was like, what's stressing you out? I was like, the Federal Reserve has a monopoly on our monetary system. And the guy was like, signed. He just gave it to me.
But now you can't get a gun.
Well, not in California. I don't know. Maybe not in California. I don't have my license
I
anymore,
don't-
but I don't know how those laws work. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
I don't know how absolute it is. It might be if like you're a current user, those cards can
it's in
disqualify you.
Maryland. Yeah. Can't have
It-
a handgun.
If you have a
Freaking
card,
nuts.
you
Yeah.
see what they do.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
And
people-
how many people were like, oh yeah, I'll get a card. It's $5. I might not use it, and boom, now it's like you got to put that on the form, and they're going to deny you. The background check form you fill out asks you if you've used drugs. So what?
But not alcohol? Doesn't mention alcohol, or does it mention pharmaceuticals either?
Well, hold on.
It does mention alcohol.
The good news is there is an exemption. Okay, if you're Hunter Biden.
Hunter Biden.
Oh,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
That's good.
you
yeah,
must
Hunter-
know somebody.
You just got to toss your illegally purchased firearm into a dumpster
Yeah, and
afterwards.
it's cool. Yeah.
So for those that don't know, he lied on his form, and then his wife did it or something. She threw it in a garbage can.
Dumpster behind the school.
yeah, it's cool. Yeah,
So
yeah.
insanely illegal.
Oh man.
And then Joe Biden comes out and he's like, I care about this. Like, no, you don't. Arrest your kid and then we'll talk.
No, Joe Biden, while this was going down, he was on another network giving a speech or something unrelated to this. Just flip the roles. If there was a school shooting massacre and Donald Trump didn't stop everything he was doing, rightly so, and shift to the school shooting, stop whatever event he was at. But Joe Biden, like you said, he doesn't care. He was out reading some teleprompter somewhere while 20 children just got murdered. If you really cared, you stop and you get your ass down to Texas and you say, I'm here. I care.
He didn't go to Waukesha.
You didn't go to
He's like,
Waukesha?
oh, I'm busy. And then what does he do? He comes out and he's like, what are deer wearing Kevlar? It's like, dude, are you hunting deer with handguns? What do you mean by this? I'm sorry, they're not saying anything. They're not saying this. I genuinely want the violence to stop. I want to solve this, okay? And so I am not a gun expert, but I know a little bit more than the average person, and I own several. And so, having been to the range, having talked with instructors, having been given instruction, having learned about the laws and having to deal with it myself, I'm like, interesting. And then every single liberal that I talk to about this will say something that makes no sense. Like there was that famous news video, I think it was CNN, I'm not sure, they said fully semi-automatic, not a thing.
It doesn't,
They think silencers are pew, pew, pew. They've never actually heard what a
They've watched
suppressor...
a movie, though.
They've watched a movie and pew, pew. They think they think these things. And then it's just fascinating when they say ban the AR-15 and I'm like, you're not saying anything. How do we... I don't know how to solve this, man. If you can't actually engage... I made a tweet about it. I said, with all of the death and destruction, it's time to do the only logical thing and implement gun policy based on the opinions of people who've never handled or researched guns.
That's right.
The Democratic Party.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right,
So
well-
I'm glad we solved the 2A issue tonight.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
So
Lot
I
of
just,
progress.
I'm at the point now when they come out with these emotional attacks or whatever, I'm just like, I literally don't care. You're not going to come to me, and I'm tired of playing this, and I'm not going to pander to anybody. I'm not going to be, you know what's really funny is every single time everyone addresses a school shooter, they go deep into this psychopath, this deranged person. We get it. Like Ted Cruz was talking to a journalist, and he's like, this psychotic, this psychopath, and I'm like, that's what everybody does. And it's predictable they do this, but we all know. No one in good faith is going to be like, oh, Ted Cruz didn't think the person was crazy. We know these people are crazy. We all get that.
But it's gonna be tough to find a solution when one party has no vested interest or no real interest in actually resolving the issue. They just want gun control. So it's hard to have an honest conversation. They're never going to come to the table and accept the fact or publicize the fact that 89% of all gun deaths in the United States are due to gang violence and suicides.
Yeah.
You know, school shootings are an incredibly rare event. Gun deaths in general, outside of suicides and gang violence, are an incredibly rare event. But given how the media covers it, you'd think that we have a crisis of mass proportions in the United States. Even if you look at it on a per capita basis, you know, deaths per 100,000, the United States doesn't even rank in the top 10 for mass shootings.
Yeah, and it's mostly with handguns. Most mass shootings are handguns. And we never talk about Chicago. And this is another, it's like a cliched response you'll get from a lot of people, especially on the right. But I get it. You know, look, kids dying is a shock to the system. I understand why we talk about that, for sure. But we do have mass shootings all the time in Chicago, in Baltimore, in Detroit, in these cities. No one seems to care about them.
So I guess Black lives don't really matter to them, huh?
Yeah.
Well, did you see that video where the guy walks up to the hospital where everyone's got the signs and he says, "Do Black Lives Matter?" And they're like, "Yes." And he's like, "What about the babies that are being aborted?" He's like, "Yeah, I didn't think so." So I certainly think when they call Candace Owens a white supremacist, these are not serious people. When Larry Elder is the blackface of white supremacy, these are not serious people. Yo, I would love to solve these problems and move this country forward, but it's seemingly impossible. Now I'll fully recognize there are people on the right who are just as bad.
Oh yeah.
But the thought leaders within the right are having the conversations. People like, I'll just shout out, Ben Shapiro's got one of the biggest podcasts in the world. He is a conservative. He is a very mainstream, traditional conservative, Orthodox Jew. And he is all about having conversations with people. Why not have those conversations? Some people do. But when we try and invite prominent people on the left, they won't do it. They won't have these conversations. And when I try to engage with them, they don't have the answers. They don't have any proposals that make sense. There's something about the arrogance that we see with the establishment Democrats, and don't get me wrong, the uniparty Republicans along with them, where there's almost no interest in getting anything done. Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.